Christian nationalism isn't just rhetoric, it's being weaponized right now to erode our democracy. A task force to eradicate anti Christian bias has been established, despite Christianity being the dominant religion, with Christians holding overwhelming governmental power. Texas just mandated daily prayer time and Bible reading in public schools, with lawmakers explicitly saying that they want to combat declining church attendance through government policy. States are passing broad religious exemption laws that create licenses to discriminate against LGBTQ plus Americans in adoption, healthcare, and public services. Christian nationalist supporters overwhelmingly embrace fascistic authoritarian control. Christian nationalism correlates strongly with anti-Black racism, anti-immigrant hatred, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim bigotry, and patriarchal gender ideology. Those who adhere to it support using violence to save the country and believe immigrants are poisoning the blood of America, reminiscent of the Nazi slogans that we've all become familiar with. This isn't about faith. It's about power, control, and exclusion disguised as religious liberty. If you disagree with the fact that Christian nationalism is a plague on America, then please call in because the show starts now.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Today is October 26th, 2025. I am Secular Rarity, and joining me today is the wonderful Godless Engineer. What's up, man?
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing?
Man, I love hearing that. It is tougher than ever to be a heathen in the South, isn't it? We are having a really fun time of it, aren't we?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Especially here in North Alabama, like it can be rather crazy. Like as far as, especially with like that anti-Christian task force that got set up. Like, I can't tell you the number of times in emails I've seen like Bible verses, but it's like I can't have like a secular sort of thing in there at all, because I'll get pegged, and then Stephen Miller's at my door like, why aren't you Christian? And he appears like Nosferatu and stuff.
It seems to me like even at Jeopardy is just like the very gentle, casual, like, oh hey, please don't be yelling about your religious beliefs in the workplace. Like even that is something that feels like is not okay right now, which is pretty wild to think about. I'll just say it. I think Christian nationalism is un-American. I just think that ideology does not actually fit with the values of the United States Constitution. And I'm sure there are people out there who can call in and change our minds. I'm sure they're out there. I don't know if they're brave enough to call. I'm not sure. So hopefully they'll show up today.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of different ways that Christian nationalism and Christianity in general is rather bad for our society in general. Like Christianity basically sets the stage for like the misogynistic nature that that has plagued American society for the longest time. It's made excuses for keeping slaves. It's made excuses for persecuting minorities in the United States. So like there's a lot of different reasons that Christianity, on just basic Christianity, is bad. But when you add the nationalism on top of that, that's using the government in order to push those bad ideas that are ingrained in Christianity. And I see it as just a bad thing, all the way around.
Yeah. Now I've got a question real quick on that. But before I ask that, let me tell you all that the Atheist Experience is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And we have lines open. We've got some calls coming in. But if you are out there and you are just like, GESR, you guys don't know jack all about Christianity, you don't know anything about Christian nationalism, if you think it is right that our government takes a religious bent and legislates based on that. Give us a call, because I know we disagree. But you were saying something there. You're saying something there, man. And I feel like I've said stuff like that before to believers. And I get told that I can't judge the religion based on some bad actions of some bad people. You know, like, look, maybe, okay, I'm not even totally sure, but maybe there were some Catholic priests doing some bad things for a while. Okay, maybe. We don't know for sure whether the Southern Baptist Church actually had to sell its headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee recently to help pay for the legal funds for all of the defense attorneys for all of their pastors that were credibly accused and found guilty of sexual assault. We don't know for sure that that's what happened. And even if we did, those bad people, they don't represent Christianity. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's something at the core of Christianity. You're saying there's something wrong with the idea itself. Am I right?
Yeah, no, I totally think so. And I've had this idea, and I really want to, spread it out a little bit into develop it further into something a bit more extensive. But if we take Christianity, like what it's taught and how it was understood for the vast majority of its history, we can easily pluck out all of these different negative things that have negatively affected our society, and especially looking at the United States of America, how that developed and how that's been affected by Christianity and Christian teachings, like the systemic racism that we are plagued with today, the systemic misogyny that's experienced by women all across the United States. Like, all of that is ingrained in Christian teaching and Christian thought and Christian moral philosophy. I would say that it's actually a rather new or recent development that Christians have reinterpreted things about their own religion in order to make it more progressive, because that's how society was going. Like, you had so many people that were using their secular humanist sort of ideals in order to fight for women's suffrage or to fight for equal voting rights for Black Americans. All of those things are driven by this secular humanist need for equality and equity. And the fact that Christians, more progressive Christians, had to redefine and re-understand, reinterpret their scriptures in order to be able to survive in this new progressing society. I think that speaks volumes to how the religion has been understood, throughout its history. And I think that it's just ingrained in it a lot of different aspects. And typically I whenever somebody tries to push back against me, oh, well, we're under a new covenant. It's like, well, yeah, sure, you're under a new covenant, but that covenant is supposed to include the laws of Moses. So all of the bad stuff from the Old Testament, until Jesus comes again and, wipes away this earth and wipes away the current heaven and establishes a new earth and a new heaven. So if that hasn't happened yet, then they still have to abide by the Old Testament laws. And so, with that in mind, I think it's really easy to argue with Christians and not allow them to specially plead their particular faith away because of, one, the history of Christianity and how that's more established, that the actual trend is the misogyny, the racism, all of that is more so established. And then you can't not allow them to especially plead that and not let them get away from the atrocities that their God did commit in the Old Testament. So you, as a Christian, you really can't get away from that, because what would you consider a sin if not what's contained in the laws of Moses? At the very least, the 10 Commandments, right? Which have a lot of problems in it. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
No. No, it was all great. And I think, honestly, even if let's just give them the toys, even if we do away with the Old Testament, there's a lot of really bad crap in the New Testament too, you know. Take out, you know, basically half of the letters attributed to Paul, we're pretty confident are forgeries. And from what I've been hearing, there's some inklings of a couple of different scholars really digging into those, like 6 or 7, and even trying to start pushing back on the legitimacy of those too. Fascinating, right? You know, but throughout this book is so much crap. And I don't take the argument from believers, you know, where they say like, yeah, but look at all of this good stuff in there too. Like, I get it. There's some weird stuff, you know, like way back when there was slavery and, you know, honestly, it just, people misinterpreted it. But all this other really nice stuff about be kind to your neighbor, or, you know, take care of the downtrodden or whatever. I think that makes this stuff worse. I think that makes these ideologies that much more poisonous. And a really good friend of mine once gave this example, and I love it. I get why it can be felt as kind of harsh to some believers, but just as a reminder, if you get all kinds of funny feels when you hear this, just call us. We're here. We got open lines. We'll talk to you. But the way he was saying it was, it's like a bunch of puppies running up to a puddle of antifreeze, because the antifreeze is like sweet, and like the puppies run up to it excited, you know, and they're lapping it up, and I know full and well that it's poison. I know that it's killing them from the inside out, you know, and yet, you know, the whole time they're just happy as all hell, just, you know, going about this, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, you know, and it makes a huge difference in the way that people orient themselves in their lives. You know, I have friends that completely avoid certain things simply because they believe demons are flying around constantly and that they might, like, I don't know, get inside them or something. But I have had this confirmed to me, by the way, from multiple different people that have cast out demons before and whatnot. You only get them if you're a believer. So, I mean, go figure on that one, right? Like, demons don't attack the non-believers. Like, it's just that simple. You're just like, I don't believe in you. And it's gone.
Oh, well, so I've been told that if you're a non-believer and you know, you've just already been infected, especially if you were a believer, and then
that's why they leave you alone, is because you're already infected with the demon, you know?
Gosh, so yeah, they're just like, you know, he's already claimed by, you know, whatever, right, you know, whatever demon. I can't even think of a good demon name. I'm not creative in that way. But, you know, Jezebel's already up inside him. So, you know, we're just gonna let that Jezebel, you know, wreck his life. And
I get it. Look, because obviously you can't have 2 demons inside you. I mean, that's just math right there. That's physics, you know, that's basic biology.
Yeah, nobody wants to get DP'd by 2 demons, you know. That's
right.
I mean, that's just.
Man, I haven't been on in like a month or 2, and like I know they are already wringing their hands like maybe it's going to be another month or 2. We have some great calls lining up, folks, but we have other open lines. So if you've got thoughts, if we've said something that you think is stupid, or we're just completely wrong, or you know what, honestly, maybe you just want to preach to us. Like, I'm here for it today. I will open it up to you if you want to give us your little preacher spiel and try to win our souls for the magical Graceland that you enjoy. If you want to, if not, that's fine. We'll just continue sinning, and we will bring down all of God's kingdom into the fiery depths of hell with us. And if you like that, by the way, if that sounds enjoyable to you, you should consider supporting us on Patreon. Giving to our Patreon ensures our ability to continue to produce the content that you love, and we've made it super easy for you. All you got to do is go to tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. Also, you can support us by sending in super chats, and if you get them in during the show, I will read them on air, and I've got a couple already to read. So if you look at this and think, wow, I could make SR say something really stupid, this is your opportunity. You will never have this opportunity again. It's a once in a lifetime. Look, $10 or higher, and I'll basically do anything. I'm kind of a slut. Anyway, God Sinner sent $5. God Sinner sent $5 and says, on behalf of At the Big Nick, take his book, read it, but don't interpret it unless you're Christian. From Kara Kell. Well, thank you very much, God Sinner. And we've also got $10 from Blind Limey, a member for 2 years and an awesome host on this channel, on the AXP whole network. Blind Limey says, loving the punished Venom secular rarity looks. All he needs is an eye patch and a horn. Well, I will tell you, I do in fact have horns, but no eye patches. But my eyes are pretty shitty. I just I've been wearing contacts for a really long time. It's not like anything in particular. I just figured, just throw that information out there for anybody that would like to know. If you stand just like 5 feet away from me, I pretty much just see a blob. So if I'm ever looking at you weird from a distance, it's probably because I can't see you. We've got a couple of calls, folks. We are going to grab some here in just a second. But remember, you can get your calls in and yell at us. You can tell us how stupid we are. Is Christian nationalism is a favorite topic? Is there any other topic you would wanna touch on?
Just Christian nationalism was the one thing that has been on my mind a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm good for any kind of atheist discussion or mythicists. I'm a pretty big mythicist.
Right.
People love, even atheists love to argue with me about the mythicism topic. So yeah.
All right. If you think Jesus was a real person, if you think Jesus was out there, and we've got good reason to believe it, then you should get your call in. But we are going to go out to North Carolina. It looks like we've got an update from somebody that called in not super long ago. Let's see if we can get Mary up here. Hey, Mary, you are on Atheist Experience with SR and Godless Engineer. What is up? I can't hear you. I don't know. GE, are you hearing anything?
I'm not hearing her either.
Okay, let me get you back into the queue, Mary. And we are going to grab Robert, coming in from Wisconsin, is an agnostic and wants to know, why would intellectual inquiry lead to God? Well, that's an interesting question, Robert. Well, hey, Robert, you are on Atheist Experience with Secular Rarity and Godless Engineer. What is up? All right. Well, that one is also quiet. So I don't know about you, but I'm not hearing anything, which means we're going to put you back in the queue for just a second. Our wonderful crew is going to get that all figured out, and we will give you a holler here in just a second, y'all. Don't go anywhere, Robert or Mary. But mythicism, man, mythicism. Mm-hmm. I have heard people say you take it too far. Mythicism as an idea is making a claim that can't be supported. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like there is good evidence? There is really solid enough evidence to say this guy didn't exist?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I try to apply the same kind of skepticism to Jesus's existence as I do to God's existence. And so it's kind of like, the way I think about it is, if there's not enough evidence to actually convince me that God exists, then, similarly, if there's not enough evidence to prove to me that Jesus exists, then, I'm not going to believe that he did exist. And so currently the evidence seems to point away from a historical Jesus and points more towards a mythical Jesus. And I think that, the real conversations can only take place between two atheists that are really wanting to geek out about Christian history and Christian origins and everything like that, because any kind of conversation with a theist is going to result in, just them trying to support the magical Jesus, which I would think that even the atheists would be like, yeah, that Jesus didn't exist, kind of thing. So I think that conversations between atheists, or at least people that are only wanting to argue for a minimal historical Jesus and not the magical gospel Jesus,
right?
That's where your most fruitful conversations are going to go.
Okay,
are going to come in.
I totally see that. Yeah, because I think if we're trying to bring in the magic and stuff, yeah, I mean that's just totally silly. Julius Caesar didn't rise to the heavens. None of this nonsense. So does your position say that there wasn't even just some dude, Yeshua, walking around gathering a couple of crowds, like talking to people? Or is it like there wasn't even anybody they were basing this shit on?
No, well, so as far as the Gospels go, I think that there were some people, like there was a Jesus ben Ananias, or Ananias, I think maybe, that was actually killed like in the siege of Jerusalem or whatnot. And I think that the Gospel of Mark, the Passion narrative, is kind of loosely based on that one. And so I think that there was no like historical person that like Paul's Jesus is based on, because Paul's Jesus is only a revelatory being. And so considering that it was only a revelatory being, there's just no reason to think that there was anybody there. Plus, if you consider that Christianity was a mystery cult initially, the fact that that it was a mystery cult, it seems to lend credence to this idea that there was no historical savior or historical person like whatsoever. It was only ever a mythological figure that they venerated. And because that's how all the other mystery cults were. They venerated a mythological character that they then worshipped, and that character had a passion. They provided eternal salvation to the followers and all this other stuff. So when you look at Christianity in that light, it's kind of hard to say, well, no, Christianity was the one super special religion at that time that had a historical person.
Right. All the other ones that it's kind of following the pattern of, you're saying we get to this conclusion, and because it's falling into that same kind of playbook, it's like, well, come on. I mean, every other one of them basically fell into the, that mythical category. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. I don't know. I've never looked through, the documents as much. I've never really, I've just heard some, just kind of periphery chatter about it over the years. And, it doesn't, you're right. I think it's mostly a conversation for the non-believers, because, if you try to go into a conversation with a young earth creationist and you're telling them that, Jesus wasn't even real and evolution is, I mean, you don't go anywhere. That's you're right there the whole freaking time. But it looks like we have our phones back up. So I am going to come to you, Robert. Let's see if we can get you on this time. Calling in from Wisconsin, it looks like. Hey, Robert, you're on Atheist Experience with GE and SR. What you got? Well, it sounds still quiet to me. Are you still quiet?
Yeah, I can't hear Robert.
Okay. Yep. I'm putting you back in the queue. And then we can have some more mythicist chatter. Maybe we'll piss somebody off with. Do you think atheists get more pissed off about mythicism or religious people?
I mean, oddly enough, yeah. I mean, I think so, because religious people, it feels like they get immediately they kind of get they get angry when you just say that Jesus wasn't the Son of God and he wasn't some cosmic wizard that, could do anything that he wanted to. But atheists, it's really surprising that atheists get mad about it, because then they go to apologetics in order to either defend Jesus or to like insult you. And that's what I get a lot, is I get a lot of insulting things like, oh, well, just so that you're denying all of history at that point. And this is like coming from atheists. It's like, no, I'm not denying history. I'm just saying that if we apply the same historical method that we do for other historical figures, Jesus doesn't exactly come out supported by anything. And a lot of people, they just don't understand how bad the evidence is. And they'll say really dumb things like, oh, Jesus is the most attested to historical figure in history.
Sure.
And it's like, are you sure? Because I don't think that you understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I literally just had a similar conversation with a believer in my area not too super long ago, because they did that whole, there's 15 documents that attest to Julius Caesar, there's 200 documents that attest to Socrates, or 25,000 documents that attest to Jesus, and it's like, well, hang on, like they're just fucking copies. Like if I just hand you a book of poetry and just tell you to write it down word for word 40,000 times, that doesn't make any of those poems real. It's not anything more than just me just being good at, copying shit.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I feel like the main misunderstanding there is concerned with like source criticism. They don't know how to do source criticism. And so like during source criticism, you would basically want to identify whether or not your source is independent of outside influence and is also like some kind of firsthand eyewitness account. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Like it can be a secondhand count, but then it depends on like who they're referencing for that information if they weren't firsthand eyewitnesses. So like for the 25,000 copies or whatever, like you were saying, that's just people copying things down. So are any of them independent of Christian, like any kind of Christian influence, like the gospel influence or Paul's influence or anything like that? And what we find is that there are no references whatsoever to Jesus outside of Paul that are not like affected by Paul. They're not influenced by Paul. Paul seems to be the start of it, at least our documented start of it. And not to say that Christianity didn't exist before him, obviously it did. But as far as the evidence that we have goes, it starts with Paul, and everything else after that's been affected by Paul in one way or another.
Okay, and help me out. I don't know if you have these dates memorized off the top of your head or anything, but like Paul's letters about like 50, 60 CE-ish.
Yeah, between 55 and about 65, I think. Or maybe it's between 50 and 65 is kind of where.
And then Mark is like 10, 15 years after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mark, so Mark would be in 70.
In 70. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So potentially between like 5 and 15 years about after that, depending on where exactly we put, and then you go all the way. And then Matthew, of course, is again, like maybe 10, 20-ish years after that.
Yeah, Matthew was in 80, right around 80 or so. Okay. And then Luke was at least after 93. And that's because
so we're getting to the century. That's what I thought. I thought Luke was really fucking close to that.
Yeah. And then John was written in the 2nd century.
Definitely in the 2nd century. Just guaranteed, definitely. And that actually is the P53 fragment, right? It's some tiny little fucking corner of John. And John is like the latest gospel anyway. Okay.
Yeah,
at least I'm not crazy.
No, you're fine. And that's from later, I believe, either in the late 2nd or early 3rd century is when that particular piece of scrap comes from. But a lot of people think that John's gospel is like some kind of independent gospel, and that's not accurate, because there's obvious indications in John's gospel that seem to indicate that he had access to all three of the previous gospels, and he specifically crafted his gospel to be like a counter argument to the previous ones.
Right, to tell a different story. I mean, it's where Jesus becomes the Alpha Omega. He's like at the beginning of the universe and all that bullshit. That's where we get the, like, you know, before you know, the universe or whatever, I am, or some bullshit like that. Jesus is the word and nonsense. But speaking of words, I think we've got a fix, and I am just going to pull you up right away, Robert. Let's see if you're there. Hey, Robert, are you there with us?
Yeah, I am. Thank you for taking my call.
Hey, thanks so much,
All
man.
right.
We are glad to have you on. You are talking with Godless Engineer and Secular Rarity. What you got for us today?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about how I don't think that intellectualism, intellectual inquiry, really makes sense as a path to God, whether proving or disproving.
Okay.
We think about kind of how individuals rationalize themselves into belief or out of belief. You know, the laws of rationality, the laws of logic, sound epistemology, these have not had, most people in existence, historically and even today, don't really have access to these sorts of things. These are not things that are even really taught in normal education, even in wealthy countries. So determining what's true, what we ought to know, and how we ought to know what is true, this is not something that is available to the vast majority of humanity. So it would not.
Can I jump in for a second, Robert? Because I think there's already a bunch of really good stuff here we can kind of poke at a little bit. So it sounds like to me you're saying, hey, look, intellectual inquiry really is not going to help you answer this question about whether or not God's real. And I guess one thing that comes up to me immediately is there anything else in life that you would say let's not have intellectual inquiry about to get to the answer? Is there any other question or category in life that you say this also applies to? Or is this the only one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think intellectual inquiry can tell you, like, what your favorite song is, or what your favorite piece of art is, or
I don't know. I think it probably could. Like, I could think of an example off the top of my head. Like, if let's just say John and I still had iPods, right? Well, your iPod kept a record of how many times you played a song and how long you played it. It lets you know whether you listened to the song halfway through 500 times or whether you listened to it in full 10,000 times. I think if we looked at those numbers, we could probably say, hey, look, based on this, it seems to be the case that you like this song more than the others.
Sure, but that doesn't tell you why you like it. That's
Well, we didn't ask that. Hold up. That's a totally different question. We can get to that in a second, right? We can get to why God is what God is, right? But if we're asking about the question, does God exist? Yes or no? Why wouldn't intellectual inquiry lead us to that question? Seems to everywhere else.
It's not inaccessible. No, because it's not really like intellectual inquiry is not what, like, your belief system, what you believe is not a matter of choice, and it's not a matter of intellectual inquiry. Now, intellectual inquiry can obviously affect what you believe over time, but very few people, and to my knowledge, nobody says, this makes sense, I'm going to believe it. This makes sense, I'm not going to believe it. It's usually a very gradual process.
I definitely know a few people like that, but that really isn't the point, right, Robert? We're not asking about whether or not you believe it. We're asking about whether or not God is real. That's what matters. And that's where I'm confused as to how in the world else will we get to that question? How would we get to an answer there without intellectual inquiry? I genuinely can't think of anything in life. And that's not to say there isn't something. I'm just saying I can't think of a single opportunity in life where a question like this would be posed, where intellectual inquiry doesn't get us to the answer. Whether or not, again, myself or John believes in it, that's a different story. We might be hypocrites, you know, we might be outright dishonest actors, right? We could see the information and still say, fuck that. But what we're talking about is just, does this water bottle exist? Why does an intellectual inquiry get us there?
So I think one of two things is happening. Either I didn't make myself clear or you're misunderstanding my point. So let me try and be more clear. Yeah, so I don't think intellectualism is a path to God. It's not a path to belief, and therefore it's kind of useless to utilize it as such. So when you ask a theist why they believe in something, their access to God is not a rational, and this is not to sound degrading or anything, but it's very typically not a rational process to get to the supernatural or to
But
get
So how do
um, so
to figure.
well, so Robert, is your point that God, if God were to exist, he should be like intellectual inquiry should be able to get us to God if he actually did exist, or are you saying that that belief in God is shown through some other kind of mechanism?
I'm kind of saying both. So I don't think that. I think I hate to operate under presumptions, but I think it demonstrates the point at this time. But under the assumption that God does exist, I don't think it wouldn't make sense for God to utilize like intellectual inquiry as the means to approach him, because this, as I said, is not something most people have access to.
Well, yeah. So, Robert, what do you mean? I'm wondering if when we talk about intellectual inquiry, are we talking about the same thing? Because I'm wondering if you can tell me what you mean by intellectual inquiry. Because what I mean when I say intellectual inquiry, I mean looking at the evidence and then coming to a conclusion. And with that conclusion, that's sort of a statement of what's convinced me is true, right? And so that's what I would mean when I say like an intellectual inquiry. What do you mean by it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're largely talking about the same thing. But I do think you snuck a premise in there that, again, that you seem to imply that belief is on some level of choice, and I just reject that proposition.
No.
I don't think either of us would take that stance.
No. I didn't sneak that in there. I would say that my conclusion would be a statement of what I've been convinced of. Not that I chose to believe that, just that I've investigated the evidence and this is what I've concluded. This is what I've become convinced of. So I agree with you that intellectualism isn't a way to choose your beliefs, because I agree with you. I don't think that we choose our beliefs, but the conclusion that we come to after the intellectual investigation into some kind of claim, that would be what we're convinced of. And through that path, I think intellectual inquiry does play a factor into belief in God.
Yeah, I guess I would just disagree. I think belief in God is primarily an emotional response, and that is something that humans can share without having any education whatsoever. That's a universal human experience.
So, I don't know. I hate to play devil's advocate on this, Robert, because I know I personally really hate it whenever theists come to me and are try to state something about why I believe what I believe or something like that. And I just have to push back against this idea that there are theists out there that are purely emotional in their belief in God. Are there some? Sure. But there are also, at least in my dealings with, multiple different theists and all the call-in shows that I'm on, is that they feel like they have an intellectual reason. They feel like they've investigated the evidence and they've come away being convinced of God, not because of an emotional faith-based reason, but because of this investigation into the evidence. Now, do I think that they're wrong? Sure. I think that they're misinterpreting information. I think that they're coming to wrong conclusions about things, but I think that that's a problem with their critical thinking skills and not necessarily just because they emotionally want to believe in God. But again, I want to stress that this isn't like me saying that there are no people that are playing into that emotional game of believing in God. There definitely are. But to say that none of them use an intellectual inquiry in order to get to their belief, I think is a bit like a broad generalization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a difference between improper conclusions, right? There's a difference between people using logic or rational thought processes incorrectly versus just not using them at all, and that I think that's a fair distinction, like GE was trying to point out there.
And that's not what I'm saying. So I do know plenty of theists who are incredibly intelligent, who use very clever and interesting arguments to justify their belief. But I don't believe that is what got them to that belief. So,
Well, but that's just
example,
unfair a little bit there, Robert. Like that's unfair, honestly. Like I'm not, again, just like GE was just saying, dude, I know for a fact that there are people out there that did not use any type of logical argumentation, right? They proudly will display that, right? But when somebody comes up to me, when a young earth creationist comes up to me and says, look, dude, I looked at the evidence for carbon dating. I looked at the evidence for evolution by natural selection, and it is not true. That is the belief that I came to. Again, just like GE was saying, I think they're incorrect. I mean, flat fucking out. I think there is more information out there to convince us that these are absolutely 100% real things. They're just using it improperly, you know, but I take them at their word. I trust them when they tell me, hey, I looked into this, you know. If I can show that they're being dishonest later on, sure, no problem. We can get to that. We can have that conversation. But if somebody comes up to you and tells you, Robert, man, I looked at the fucking evidence, I mean, definitely, man, take them at their word. Don't be unfair to them. You want them to be charitable to you too.
it's not. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're being dishonest. I'm not saying that they're really just trying to play a sneaky game. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
I'm saying what generally happens is we're primarily emotional creatures. We use logic and rationality to kind of justify our position. So I think, primarily, like, people will have a belief in God, and then they'll look into like the Kalam cosmological argument. They'll look into Aquinas's arguments. They'll look into, however many multitudes of apologetics arguments there are to justify.
And that solidifies it for them.
Right, and they could be wrong. I think there are plenty of clever theistic arguments. I think most of them are unconvincing personally, but I don't believe that they use that is not a means to God, and it wouldn't make sense that it would be.
Now that's the part I wanna dig in on, because again, honestly, I think all three of us here, including our backup Scott Dickey, I think all of us would agree that, like, hey, there's a lot of people out there that come to their beliefs for like shit reasons, like absolutely. And there's a lot of people, including ourselves, let's not take ourselves out of this, right? We also will have a belief formed in our head for irrational reasons, and then we'll find supporting information to justify it. We're all on board, I think, with that thought, right? That some of that exists out there. It's when you take that hard stance of being like, yeah, it's just never gonna work, right? Like it just doesn't lead to God. That's the thing that I don't understand, and I want to dig in on. What do you mean by that? And why do you think that wouldn't be the way that we get to this understanding of whether or not God is real, what the characteristics of God are, whether or not that was recorded accurately in the Bible? Like, help me understand that part of it, Robert.
So I've spoken to plenty of theists, for example, who I'll go through many different, like, let's say, atheistic arguments, let's say, like the problem of divine hiddenness. And I'll explain the entire thing. And a theist will say, that makes absolutely perfect sense. However, that is not what's going to talk them out of their faith. They're not going to run into a rational argument and destroy their actual.
Why do you say so? Why do you say that just so blanket like that? Why not take the stance you were taking just a second ago that's just slightly softer and really loses no ground for you? Just say generally, or in my experience, or a large proportion of. Why not take that stance instead of just saying, no, it's never going to work?
Yeah, so I mean, I shouldn't speak in absolutes, and I don't know the enormity of human experience, of course, but I think what happens is it
cut out for me, Robert. Did it cut out for you, GE?
Yeah, it cut out for me too.
Ah, damn it. Okay. Well, hang on, Robert. If you can hear us, I'm gonna put you back in the queue. We're not gonna drop you. We're just gonna put you in the queue. And if you're still there, we are gonna try and bring you back up, if we can. If not, That is okay. Let's just try to jump right into it because Mary's been waiting for a minute. We got Mary, she, her from North Carolina. Oh, give me just a minute here. We are just having it restart. Yeah. So, okay. What do you think on that, GE? Do you think that, yeah, you were about to have something. It sounded like you're about to go into something. Did you have some thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I did, which it seems like it's back up. Do you want to see if we can get Robert back in here?
I think Robert has dropped, unfortunately. So let's
wait. Return. Hold on. Sorry. No, okay. I accidentally pulled somebody up.
That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. We'll give it a second here. Do you want to finish your thoughts and then we'll go into one of these others?
Yeah, I definitely will. So all I was going to point out was kind of an analogy, and I use this analogy, in a couple of different ways. But it's like it felt kind of like Robert was saying, "Oh, well, this one argument is not going to cause them to, leave their faith." It's like, yeah, it's not meant to. Like an honest intellectual inquiry is not just going to hear one argument and then automatically, believe such a radically different idea, right? But I was going to ask Robert, like, if you take one swing at a tree with an axe, and it's like, I'm talking about like a thick oak tree, if you take a swing at a thick oak tree with an axe, is it going to cut down immediately? I mean, of course, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, he learns how to, cut them down with one swing.
And that's historically accurate.
Right, exactly. And so my point was just going to be that, like, look, true, you're not going to cut down their tree of faith with one axe swing, but through multiple different, cuts and strategic ways in which you bring down that tree of faith, I think that every single swing is important. So every single time you can actually cut down a little bit more of that tree, I think is going to be like the way that you convince somebody away from some position like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, again, part of the thing that I was thinking was, is there any other place in life that this is the case? And I don't think it is. I think every other conclusion, intellectual inquiry is the thing that gets us there, right? Whether we recognize it or not doesn't matter. It's us investigating these things one way or the other. We all forgot what it was like when you were just brand new and you grabbed everything and put it into your face because you're a little scientist crawling around on the rug trying to find out if this shit's food or not. Like, this is what we do as people constantly. Every step that you take, you are testing the ground underneath you and getting that sensory feedback from the world around you. And so you might not be consciously going through this process of going, yes, if my foot lands on this platform, then I can step up. That's fine. But that's what's happening everywhere. And I don't see why there would be anything in life that doesn't get us to that, For some people, they then tell me that, that just takes the magic out of love. And I'm like, no, it's so much better. Like, love and beauty and art are so much better because that's what it's come from, as opposed to just some like snap of the fingers. And now it's like, I've got love. Like, if Cupid could just shoot a fucking arrow into somebody, right? Then all the planning and effort, we've all put into relationships over the years is like fucking garbage now. It's like, why the hell were we doing all of that? Cupid with your little fucking wings and, come on, man, shoot an arrow. But we have some other calls. We did lose Robert, unfortunately. But Robert, hey, if you're out there real quick, just call back in, man. We have some other open lines. So call back in and we will put you back on because I think there was some other really cool stuff to get through. We have some other really cool calls, but I am going to tell you real quick, you can become a channel member for as little as 99 cents a month, or there is no maximum as far as I understand. I think you can just give a shit ton of money. If you want to give $1,000 a month, it is possible for you to do that. And if you are not finding a way to send those oodles and oodles of cash, please call me directly and I will make sure it gets to exactly the right place. Put it to P.O. Box. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. No, it's very easy. Click the join button below the video. This will give you access to all the super cool special chat emojis and early access to all of the really cool YouTube shorts and clips. So definitely check that out. Let's grab Mary. She has been hanging for a minute. Let's bring her on. Hey, Mary, you are chatting with Secular Rarity and Godless Engineer. What is up?
Oh, I've called in the past 2 weeks, and I've been deconstructing since 2008, and I've gone back and forth on it because I was raised in a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian home and had a lot of years of indoctrination. I was feeling guilty about like dishonoring my parents' faith, and like I just felt guilty for abandoning God. And I forget who the hosts were, but they suggested I join a secular community, and I did that. I've had 3 meetings with them now, and I'm going to painting classes, and I'm sure of what I believe and why I believe it. And I've come out to a few people, and it's just been really freeing. I've been in a really good place.
Good. That's great.
That's so awesome. That's so freaking awesome.
Let go of all that baggage.
Yeah. And I love that you said painting. I'm sure you guys do a bunch of other really cool stuff too, Mary. But I love that you said that. And here's why. Because I think secular community, non-religious community, atheist community is the fucking hot thing right now. I think that is what everybody is wanting. We are trying to figure out how the hell do we do this and do it well. And I think a lot of people aren't realizing that stuff like painting classes is what's going to do it. You know, we need comedy nights. We need to go bowling. We need to get out in the woods. You know, I love that we sit around, you know, and I love that we talk about how the Bible's dumb. I love it. It's super fun. I really enjoy doing it. But I'm telling you, that type of stuff, Mary, that's going to be the stuff that keeps people coming back. That's going to be the stuff that keeps people, you know, telling their friends, donating money. That is what is going to change some shit, you know? So I am super, super glad that you are getting such positive feedback.
Yeah, we have book clubs and, you know, hiking, painting, discussion groups, food drives. You know, it's just a whole community. And we don't just sit around and talk about secular stuff all the time. We just do things together. And it's
right. That's important. There's something really, really valuable about that. And there's a lot of us, unfortunately, in this non-religious space that have a bit of an aversion to those types of gatherings and stuff. You know, when we hear somebody's doing a potluck at their house, you know, or when we all start singing the same song together around the bonfire, you know, so a couple of people get a little weirded out for a second. They're like, whoa, wait a second. That's real churchy. And it's like, no, fuck that. They do not have an exclusive claim on being a human. They don't have that, man. Community is a human thing. And this is something for all of us. And I think the secular people do it a little bit better. That's my bias. So
yeah, because that's one thing I missed was the community, but it doesn't come with the guilt and the hell and the indoctrination and the shame and all of that.
Right. Yeah. It's really nice. It's really nice to be a part of a group that doesn't constantly tell you you're a piece of shit. Right. That's really cool.
It is. So in this show, you know, what did it for me, what finally clinched when I started deconstructing, it was I realized that, you know, the creation story, and especially Adam and Eve, was an allegory or a myth. And if that's not true, then there's no reason for Jesus to die. And, you know, I didn't have to get beyond Genesis to go, oh, this is all just a bunch of crap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, Mary, that's a phenomenal story too, especially with our last caller, you know, the idea that, yeah, you know what? Maybe you never did look into a lot of this shit when you started believing. But when you did finally start going down that path of skepticism, when you really started inquiring and asking yourself to be intellectually honest about the information in front of you and the conclusions you reach, you changed your fucking mind. and you changed your whole life, you know? So like, hell yeah, rational conversation, intellectual inquiry, evidence, reason, logic. Hell yeah, these things change people's minds. I mean, don't get me wrong, emotional shit can also change people's minds, but like, yeah, it says here, we have a note that it says it took you like 17 years to deconstruct. That's fucking incredible. That is amazing, you know? And that was through intellectual inquiry.
It was. And I have some people in my life that are secular, and they introduced me to different authors. And, you know, one of them was able to convince me that there wasn't a hell. There wasn't someone in my head, you know, reading all my thoughts. It's like I could have my own space. It was mine. I could think what I wanted. There was no thought crime. And then that led me down the road of, you know, intellectual inquiry and thinking, you know, it's very safe to know that I don't have anybody in my head judging my thoughts.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, that is a lot nicer, you know. And tell me this, did you suddenly start robbing all of your friends and family? Did you start very casually kicking puppies and kittens? Did you just suddenly turn into an outright nightmare piece of shit to everybody in your life, or you about the same?
My relationships got a whole lot better. I started loving people for who they were, accepting
look at
them,
that.
you know, being able to respect their beliefs and being able to speak mine. You know, I made some new friends. We're very close. We talk every day. You know, I'm less stressed at work. You know, I don't feel responsible for other people's souls or the decisions that they're making. I can just let them be themselves and love them as they are. My relationships have gotten closer, you know, especially with my daughter and my grandchildren. I don't worry about their souls. I just love them for who they are and teach them to think critically. You know, my daughter's not a believer either, so I'm so glad, because she started deconstructing she probably deconstructed before I did.
Yeah.
And, you know, raising the kids in a secular environment with critical thinking skills. They get to read Harry Potter, which I love.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a big thing too, you know. The numbers that we see growing in the various religious communities that we see them, it is really not due to people converting later in life. It is really not due to people becoming convinced as they investigate the claims. It is the fact that they are having babies. Right? You have 7, you know, or 17 kids, and you raise them all to be good Christian soldiers. I mean, yeah, you're going to see some numbers go up. But here's the coolest number, is that we are deconverting people every single fucking year, and those numbers are rising. The amount of people that are stepping away from faith entirely is growing more and more and more. And I just think that's an awesome trend. So the further that we can get away from these ideas, the better our society will be. And genuinely, guys, I just think that evidence is so fucking demonstrable. You can't argue it. You know, it is just out there. We have decades worth of data from all around the world. And yet there are some in our country that really, really think the best time in our history was like 2,000 years ago with all the laws and none of the medicine. And it's like, wow, guys, fucking wow. GE, you got any thoughts on this, man?
No, I mean, I think that it makes total sense that your relationships would get better there by accepting people for who they are and everything like that. Because one of those things that I feel like is ingrained in, like, you know, Christian teaching and how Christianity has been understood for a majority of its history is this very anti-pluralistic sort of idea. This idea that only the Christian way or only the Christian God and what the Christian God wants being the paramount thing is the only way to live life and the only way to accept people in your life and all this other stuff. I think that that's one of, like, people often will try to I guess, sanitize the idea a little bit, but I actually think that it's probably one of the more toxic traits of Christianity. So I'm not surprised that it made your relationships better, and I'm so glad that you were able to, to get yourself out of that kind of belief system intellectually.
Yeah, I was born into it. When they say train up a child in the way he should go, indoctrination is really powerful.
Yeah,
it's really powerful. And I would say to parents, don't indoctrinate your children because they're going to resent you for it later. I dealt with that for a while, and I was able to, we were able to overcome that before they passed. But
yeah, I'll say this, Mary. One of the things out there, I believe that is really lacking in the non-religious space is some really good information about child raising a child. There is not a lot of content from what I've seen about how to be a secular parent, how to be a non-religious, mother or father. I think those things are super, super duper valuable. And so, yeah, obviously I'm not giving you advice. I'm not directing you to do anything, Mary. I would never tell you to go out of your way to do anything, because that's not what we do on this show. But yeah, maybe you and your newfound friends in your new secular community could talk about doing some atheisty parenty stuff. I don't know. It does look like we lost Mary, unfortunately, but I do hope she heard that at the very least. What do you think about that, man? Do you feel like I'm reading that right? Like there's not a shit ton of content out there for non-religious parents? Like it's like, how do you raise your kid as an atheist,
Yeah, and I think that that there's not too much out there for like how to navigate a lot of like critical conversations that you can have with your child. How to deal with depression and how to deal with all of those kinds of things. I mean, I think that there are several organizations out there that have resources available that can help you navigate those kinds of conversations. But I don't think that a lot of people know about those resources. And I think that a lot of parents kind of find themselves, if they've come from a very religious background, they can find themselves kind of in the deep end of it, not really knowing how to address things or what they should say, what they shouldn't say, and everything. And I think that it's that's just kind of part of being a parent, not exactly knowing what to do, what to say, but trying to find good resources to educate yourself on it. And it's always going to be a constantly evolving thing. I know as a parent myself, I've got a 15-year-old. Every time he gains a year, I have to like try to think, okay, well, what do I need to do different now that he's like 15? Or, as soon as he starts driving, it's like, okay, what do I need to do anything different now? Kind of thing. I'm always kind of trying to check myself and like, try to think about what's the best way to address this with him. So.
Yeah. I do not have children. I know that there was at least a half dozen people watching that just sighed a real heavy sigh of relief. There are no mini SRs running out there. But yeah, I think that is something that is, it's challenging enough on its own, just raising a kid at all, right? To attempt to try to navigate through that space, especially when you've had a massive shift in your ideology, or you've lost all of your friends and family due to this, or anything like that, is definitely a very, very difficult space. But we still have open lines, y'all. We still got time. If you think me and GE are just fucking idiots, we will let you call in and say that, because honestly, like I feel like we can handle it. I just feel like we're strong enough. We're big alpha males. Is that right? Is that cool still? Is that still okay to say? I don't know. Right?
I don't know. I would feel incredibly like cringy, like saying I'm an alpha
like
male.
If you say it for real. Right. It's like everybody that tells you they're super cool or like really great in bed. It's like, yeah, probably not.
The people that often will be like, I'm an alpha male. male, you're like, if you actually are quote unquote an alpha male, you don't have to tell people.
Don't tell people.
That.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think it would be kind of fun though if we had like a whole show where the hosts were just like Macho Man Randy Savage the whole time, you know, was just like, you know, let me tell you something, brother. Just every time, like, you know, it's like, Jesus is real, the Trinity is real, it makes logical sense. Well, let me tell you what. Oh God.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we did have one caller that was calling in to like talk about the Trinity, I guess, as a defending it, and I was really sad to see them drop. But
I know.
It's because I really want somebody to explain the Trinity to me. I do not understand the Trinity whatsoever, and I've not been able to make heads or tails of it.
I don't think there is really a good understanding of it. In all honesty, I just don't think there is a way for you to genuinely accept that they are both somehow the same and separate, right? Like it just literally is paradoxical. Like I've heard all kinds of ways to fucking try and make it make sense. You know, the one that gets the closest, I guess, is the water analogy where they're like, it's ice, it's steam, it's liquid. And it's like, right, but it's all still H2O molecules. So it's literally the exact same molecule freezes, you know? It's just like, whatever, man. I have not figured out a really good answer for that one. We do have a super chat to read, but I'm going to keep people on the edge of their seats for just a second because I actually have this really cool comment that was posted on one of the videos here on the Atheist Experience network, and it's about you. And I want to get some thoughts. I think this is an interesting question. I know that it's been answered at least once or twice, okay? But I still think it is always worth throwing out there. So it starts off, wow, an atheist talking about religion. Ugh, shocker. Sure do spend a lot of time on something you don't believe in. I guess when you have nothing to offer, that's all you can do. I mean, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's fair, John? Do you think you have nothing to offer and that you just go out of your way to talk about garbage that you don't believe in for no reason? I mean, help me understand this. Why do you put yourself through this?
Yeah, I mean, I do get this sentiment a lot online, and for me at least, I went through my life and I never questioned what I was told to believe, and I never really knew why I believed certain things. And so I when I started looking into what I believed and why I believed it, I really wanted to be a good model for other people to critically think about their positions and, you know, believe in things because they truly have investigated it and they truly believe it. And so I feel like the number of years I've been doing this, which I've been doing atheist activism online since 2012 or so. And, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I feel like I do have a lot of good insights on things. Like there are a lot of things that religious people take for granted as far as their religion goes. And this is outside of the Abrahamic faith, just all religious people as far as critical thinking goes. Like I've had to learn, I've had to merge. I won't say learn because I already knew how to do critical thinking, but I had to merge, that religious sort of side of my brain with my more analytical side. And once that happened, it's like the analytical side just sort of took over and just devoured my religious belief, because once you actually apply critical thinking to these religions, it just doesn't make sense knowing the things that we currently know. And so, yeah. No, and I get that. And I think, my number one answer to this type of sentiment from believers is, of course, if everybody would just shut the hell up about it, like I wouldn't
It wouldn't matter to me. So just in case anybody's unaware of this, there is actually a group of people out there that are fully convinced that the second movie in the Lord of the Rings trilogy is the best. Okay. And they can believe that, right? The difference between them and the Christian nationalists, right, is those people, as wrong as they are in their conclusions about these three movies, like, they're not out there fucking over people and trying to pass laws and force people to only watch, you know, the Two Towers, right? Again, they are wrong. And if you're in that camp, thank you for keeping that incorrect opinion to yourself. But again, if they were out there parading in the streets and you know, beating up trans people, I would also have a problem, you know? Again, not just for the fact that they clearly seemingly just kind of misunderstood the whole storyline of Lord of the Rings. If they're thinking that the second, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm hoping somebody gets pissed off and we can end this show with somebody calling in bitching about Lord of the Rings. But anyway, real quick, I wanted to throw this comment up here too, because this one was about me apparently. I made the claim at one point that faith is really just wishful thinking. And somebody decided, in fact, I was wrong, because their defense is that faith is believing when common sense tells you not to. So I kind of feel like that's worse, in all honesty. I just kind of feel like what I said was less bad. What you said was worse. And I'm not going to say that you're incorrect there. I will say that, yeah, I don't use the word faith in a context that is equivalent to trust. I don't use that word in that capacity. That doesn't make any sense to me. And the reason is, if you actually parse out the definitions of these types of similar words, there's only one space that faith can occupy, because we don't have a single other word to talk about what that sentiment is. What do you do when somebody has every fucking reason to not accept something and they still accept it? What do you call that? I think the answer is faith. That's the word. You know, that's what you say. But again, if we've upset you, if you're mad at us, we still have open lines. We've still got time, folks. You can make us look like fucking idiots live on stream for thousands and thousands of people forever. Historians can talk about how much you fucking owned us, or, you know, maybe you're just cowards. I don't know. I would never put that on the people. Anyway, they're never going to let me back on this show, man. It's going to be like 3 more months till I get back on. Oh, wait, we have super chats. Hang on. Let me read the super chats. I'll actually do my job correctly. We have from Salad Von Bako. That's a great name. That $10 saying something really stupid. Ha, made you say it. You did. I mean, that was really good, actually. You called my bluff entirely, you know, and I'm happy that I was here to actually deliver, and you held me accountable, Salad. So I appreciate that. I really should have a salad. I feel like I haven't had a salad in a while. It's not like about you, by the way, the username that just gave $10. I'm just saying, like, I kind of would enjoy like a Caesar salad or something with like crispy chicken. Man, I'm way hungrier than I thought I was. I really should have eaten before I got on here. Anyway, we've got another one, another super chat for 666 from Mark Compliz. Well, there's no message, so thank you, Mark, or Mr. Compliz. I'm not sure which you go by. Or Mrs. Actually, I don't know at all. But thank you either way, because by donating $6.66 to this show or any of the shows at the Atheist Experience Network, you have in fact opened up a wormhole to the netherworld, and demons will fly into somebody's butt, not necessarily yours. Terms and conditions may apply. Before we grab, so I saw your face there for a second. You were like, "What terms and conditions would be applied?" We gotta.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, every time you donate 666 to the show, a demon gets a body. Like, a demon inhabits a body.
Right. That's exactly what happens. Yes. If you are a good skeptic and you want to test that out, why not donate 666 right now? Just see what happens. Go stand around waiting for like your least favorite coworker or a family member, and just see if they get inhabited, and then call us. That'd be great. But we have to send a massive thank you to the people who deal with our shit way too much and sigh profusely and facepalm regularly. The wonderful, incredible crew. Every single week we've got video operators, audio operators, note takers, call screeners, chat moderators, people that are there in person at the library, fixing it up, keeping it going, people that are responding to your emails and planning incredible, awesome events for the future. All of those people, they're not mad at us, they're just disappointed. But they are amazing, and we greatly, greatly appreciate them. We are gonna go out to North Carolina. We're gonna talk with Gigi, is an atheist, she, her pronouns. Hey, Gigi, you are on the Atheist Experience with Godless Engineer and Secular Rarity. What is happening?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
I'm here with my kitties and my theist husband who's driving me crazy. But otherwise, what I called, I thought it was you guys, but it was the line that I called, and I made a fool of myself, and Matt doesn't have a lot of patience with fools. And I wanted to clarify. I wanted to know, the way I worded it was, why do preachers why do they not tell about the bad things in the Bible? And of course, duh, I mean, we all know that. So what I really wanted to know is, are they just, surely they're not ignorant. They read the Bible. They know of those things. But the only way I found out was from listening to you guys.
Sure.
And
I will say, Gigi, this isn't a blanket statement. This definitely isn't every single one of them. But I think a lot of us would be surprised how many pastors, preachers, or just individuals that are in a position of authority in a religious environment, we would be surprised to find out how many of them know very little. And I think that is a bit more common than people realize. I can tell you, for instance, like in Tennessee, where I'm at, there are a lot of churches around me that I know for a fact, that the pastor that is there went to 8 years of divinity school and 3 years after that doing whatever and wrote this book and reads Hebrew and blah, blah, blah. But I can find just as many that have never done any of that shit. They've never done any of that shit whatsoever. They literally woke up one day and were like, I'm gonna be a preacher, and started preaching at a church. And 10 years later, that's where they are. So I would say you're actually not that far off, Gigi. Like, there are a lot of people out there in religious environments of authority that they really don't know their theology.
Yeah, I think if they would just be straightforward, and when they're reading, doing their message in the pulpit, and they just they might read the lines, but they don't explain it like they would, the good things supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband, try to talk with him, he gets upset. I don't know. Ask the preacher. So I did one day, and his name is Adam, and I asked Adam, I said, I know you didn't go to seminary school, and he jumped in there really quick, and he wanted to rectify it. He said he had taken a lot of seminary courses, which is fine. I don't, and he's an intelligent man, but he was driving, he said, and he couldn't look up these things right. He said, I'll have to get back with you. And that's been over a month. And I haven't, I think deep down in his heart, he knows there's no good explanation for these things, but he doesn't want to confront it. I may be completely off, but.
No, I totally get what you're saying there. And I think that a lot of preachers, they don't know the Bible like a New Testament scholar or even an Old Testament sort of scholar. Just a biblical scholar in general would know the Old Testament, primarily because they're there to just preach this one particular narrative-driven message about Jesus and not like teach anything about anything else in the Bible. And it's when you throw them off their script that you can tell that they're not really prepared to do anything else but this very surface level sort of apologetics that you get. And like I would, if I were still like going to church and everything like that, I regularly ask believers about the very difficult passages, like Numbers 31 is a particularly difficult passage. And I've found that either people have a disgusting opinion about it, like divine command theory, oh, that was the best thing that could have happened at that point in time and everything like that. Oh shit, we lost Gigi.
That's all right.
Yeah, like that was the best thing that could have happened, or they just simply don't know, which I would actually prefer the I don't know how to rectify that kind of situation, or I don't know how to explain that kind of thing. I'd prefer that as opposed to them just saying, well, God can do whatever God wants to do. He's God. Right. Because that's the scarier answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And I agree with you too. There's a lot of times that, and I didn't see this either, when I was a believer and I was playing in the church band and stuff, I thought the pastor knew everything that was going on in Judges. I thought the pastor had a great understanding of Jericho and Joshua's army and all this shit, and you know why? Because in part, they even mentioned the fact that, hey guys, good news, archaeology came through this time for us. We actually found the walls of Jericho. How cool is that? It's undeniable proof. Praise Jesus. Well, they didn't fucking know that there's been intense scholarship on the fact that, like, no, at the time of like Joshua's supposed army, like this would have been abandoned for a very long time. Like they definitely did not conquer this city, right? That is not how that occurred, right? There is a city. It does exist, Alexandria in Egypt was a place way back when, there was a library. But yeah, again, like not the way the story goes. And yeah, unfortunately, I do say that even those in positions of authority, unfortunately, in the Christian faith and others, they do not have as much knowledge on their belief systems and the documents as you would hope, But that's all right, because I will say this, it gives us an opportunity to try and correct some of those mistakes and shed some light on some things and push back on the harmful garbage that people espouse every day in the name of these religions. But you know what, guys? Look, I think we need another opinion. Maybe we're wrong. Okay, we could be incorrect here. And good news is that we've got a third opinion, a regular, somebody you love, you're excited to have. We have our wonderful backup host with us, Scott Dickey. Let's get him up here and get his thoughts. What is up, man?
I've crunched the numbers and you're both wrong. I'm sorry.
Son it's just of a bitch. Yeah, did we this whole time? It's like, it's like been an hour and a half. We've been fucking wrong this whole time.
I'll show you the memory dump later, but facts is fact, right?
Well, I mean, look, we always say if the evidence is presented, we'll change our minds. So I guess here we are. But
no, but I thought you guys had a great show. We had some good calls. For Mary Kate's call, I only wrote down one word in my notes here. authenticity, right? It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
such a wonderful thing about having an authentic identity, and authentic community, an authentic way to interact with people, and you know, you don't have to worry about all of the you know, the ruffles and the add-ons and everything. Just deal face to face, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
But I had one question I wish we could have asked Robert, and he kept talking about a intellectual inquiry, and I was just curious as well, what does non-intellectual inquiry look like? I mean, he said something about emotional, and you know, is emotions really what you want to base your belief on? In fact, is emotion what you want to base your most important beliefs on? I don't know. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can wake up in the morning someday and just be crabby for no reason at all, just for and so I think we all have experience with the ineffectiveness of our emotions being a guide to truth. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see where that would have gone. But you know, I know we had some technical difficulties, but great job handling those, and now it's a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, well, good, man. Good. It is always fun to get to hang out with both of you wonderful gentlemen. I think you have some great thoughts, and you know, I'm still not convinced, guys. I just don't think there's a fucking God out there, and I think there's really good reason to keep believing that. Good news. Good news is, you know, this show will be back next Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. You got Talk Heathen at 1 p.m. Central Time right before it. You got Truth Wanted on Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. And I'll be honest, at this point, I am desperately trying to figure out how to close out these shows, because I would like to come back in the future, but it's been a while, and so I'm just kind of scrambling and seeing if I can look through any of these notes in front of me here to help get... You know that feeling when you're away for a while and you wonder, do they still like me? It's nice to just have solid confirmation one way or the other.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.